In April this year, the Supreme Court of Ghana decided a unique question of law. Is it possible for a person to be sentenced, serve the sentence in full, be released, and thereafter have his sentence enhanced on the basis of his own pending appeal? Put simply, can your own appeal against your sentence be used to lock you up again after you've already tasted freedom? Remember, the Supreme Court provides direction to all courts on points of law. So when the Supreme Court speaks, we must pay attention. In November 2013, Obuoba and Ayiti were visiting a family land at Ajangote near Kwabenya. When they arrived, they noticed some works were ongoing on the land and attempted to inquire from the workers who had given them permission to be there. It was there that they were confronted by one MUSTAPHA IDDRISU and some other individuals who claimed that they were hired to protect the land. A misunderstanding ensued, and Ayiti attempted to make a call. This infuriated MUSTAPHA's group, and then it happened. In one swift, brutal motion, MUSTAPHA raised his cutlass and brought it down on Ayiti. The blade severed his wrist completely. His hand falls down to the ground and blood splatters everywhere. Chaos ensues. Ayiti is rushed to Gayak Hospital. His severed hand is recovered from the scene and brought along, a desperate hope that maybe doctors may be able to reattach it. He is then transferred to Kolubu, but even there things prove futile. The hand could not be saved. MUSTAPHA was put before the High Court and was charged with the offense of causing harm. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment in hard labor and was ordered to pay 10,000 cedis in compensation. 5 years for taking a man's hand. Some might say it's not enough, but the sentence was handed down and MUSTAPHA began serving his time. But MUSTAPHA was not satisfied. Somehow, despite the overwhelming evidence and despite the horror of what he did, he felt aggrieved, so he appealed the sentence. He took the case to the Court of Appeal, hoping for leniency and hoping to reduce his sentence. The wheel of justice grinded slowly and the appeal sat. Meanwhile, MUSTAPHA continued serving his time. Days turned to months and months into years. And then one day, he had served his full sentence. It's over, and he walked out a free man. Just when MUSTAPHA thought the nightmare was behind him, the Court of Appeal finally got round to hear his case. But instead of reducing his sentence like he hoped, the judges do the exact opposite. They look at the evidence and the brutality of the crime and decided that the 5 years was not enough. It was not even close. So they imposed a maximum of 10 years. But the elephant in the room had to be addressed. MUSTAPHA had already served his 5 years. He had been released and was already walking free, trying to rebuild his life. And now the Court of Appeal was saying that he needed to go back to prison for another 5 years. And this is how the matter came to the Supreme Court. MUSTAPHA appealed yet again. His arguments were straightforward. He had served his time and paid his penance. There was nothing left to enhance. The matter was moot, and to send him back now be a substantial miscarriage of justice. A chief state attorney representing the Republic admitted that MUSTAPHA had indeed been released from custody by the time the Court of Appeal gave its enhanced ruling, but she argued that the appeal was pending before his release and it was never withdrawn. The fact that MUSTAPHA had been released did not make the appeal moot, and the Court of Appeal had every right to determine the appeal. After all, appeals are by way of rehearing, and the process of rehearing was pending despite the release of MUSTAPHA. The Supreme Court admitted that this was a novel question. Had MUSTAPHA been dealt with fairly and reasonably? They had to go beyond the borders into the USA to find a precedent, and what they find is a principle rooted in justice. You cannot place somebody in jeopardy twice for the same crime once they've already paid the penalty. To subject MUSTAPHA, who had served his full 5-year sentence, to another more severe judgment for the same offense placed him in jeopardy for the crime for which he had already paid the penalty. The court also referred to Article 14(6) of the Constitution, which required courts to always take into consideration periods spent in lawful custody before imposing a term of imprisonment. Compliance with this requirement was to be clear implicitly or explicitly on the record. The Supreme Court took the view that the Court of Appeal had occasioned a substantial miscarriage of justice by enhancing MUSTAPHA's sentence after he had fully served his original 5-year sentence. In their view, there was no justification for that. MUSTAPHA won the case and went back to his freedom. Even though technically justice was served, two questions linger. Why was he only charged with causing harm when the more suitable charge was causing harm with an offensive weapon, a charge that would have given the trial judge much more freedom as it attracts up to life imprisonment? Given that he severed a man's hand with a cutlass, 5 years seems shockingly lenient. And second, why did the appeal take so long? The very slowness of the system that we complain about actually saved MUSTAPHA. If the appeal had moved swiftly and was determined while MUSTAPHA was behind bars, the enhancement to 10 years would have still been perfectly legal. he would have served it. But because the wheels of justice turn so slowly, justice delayed became justice denied. Perhaps this time for the victim, not the offender. Well, we may never know the answers. But what do you make of the case? Follow SuperlawGH Studios for more real stories, real cases, real people.